May 2025, Alabama's governor faces what no leader wants: a fragile economy bound to space contracts and a housing market buckling under a shortage few dared quantify. Just 52 affordable rentals per 100 households, with an 84,000-unit deficit looming statewide. As fresh warnings emerge and the state's reliance on aerospace deepens, one question hangs in the balance. How did this power structure unravel so quickly? And what hidden forces are still at play? Governor Kay Ivey took the stage at the Von Braun Center on May 5, 2025, with a message tailored to the crowd of business leaders and aerospace executives gathered in Huntsville. The transcript from that morning's Chamber of Commerce event captured her confidence. Alabama, she said, had attracted $55 billion in new investments since 2018, with Huntsville's tech and aerospace sectors driving much of the momentum. She singled out Blue Origin's expansion, the steady growth at Mazda Toyota, and Huntsville's role as a logistics hub for the region. But woven into the optimism, Ivey acknowledged a persistent divide. Rural counties still lagged behind, and wage growth had not kept pace with national averages. Her speech closed with a pointed question to investors: how could Alabama guarantee a ready and well-trained workforce for the next wave of contracts? The answer, she argued, lay in the state's commitment to education and the passage of the new $11 billion school budget. Yet the subtext was clear. The economic engine in North Alabama was running at full throttle, but it was a single engine, one that depended heavily on the fortunes of space and defense contracts. By 2025, Huntsville and Madison County stood as proof of that concentration. More than 23,000 people in the area worked in space-related industries, from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center to private contractors and suppliers. This cluster made up the backbone of local employment, shaping everything from school funding to retail traffic. The latest figures from the Alabama Department of Labor placed Madison County's unemployment rate at just 2.3% in April, holding steady at 2.3% in May, and ticking up to 2.6% in June. These were some of the lowest rates in the state, and well below the national average. Yet those numbers masked a deeper exposure. With so much of the local labor force tied to a single sector, any disruption, whether a contract delay, a technical anomaly, or a federal budget fight, could ripple through paychecks and city budgets almost overnight. The governor's remarks, delivered in a moment of apparent strength, hinted at the fragility beneath the surface. The prosperity of Huntsville, and by extension much of Alabama's economic optimism, rested on a foundation that was both impressive and precarious. Across Alabama, the numbers behind the housing market told a much different story than the headlines. For every 100 extremely low-income households, just 52 affordable rental homes existed. That left nearly half of the state's most vulnerable renters competing for the same limited options, and by March 2025, the total shortfall had reached 84,000 units. These figures were not estimates. They were pulled straight from the state's official housing profile, updated and reviewed by policy analysts every quarter. The deficit meant that entire communities, from Birmingham's urban neighborhoods to rural Wiregrass counties, faced a daily grind of searching, waiting, and often settling for housing that strained already tight budgets. While rising home values and new construction projects filled economic reports, the reality for renters was much less optimistic. Waiting lists for subsidized apartments stretched for months, sometimes years. Advocacy groups tracked thousands of at-risk households each month, but the true scale of the crisis remained largely hidden from public view. Local officials acknowledged the pressure, but with no statewide emergency order or public-facing plan, many questions about the state's response went unanswered. The absence of clear action raised new questions. A search through the governor's executive order archive revealed no record of directives addressing housing affordability, homelessness, or emergency rental aid between June 2024 and November 2025. No press release, no budget memo, no mention of foreclosures or evictions in any speech or official statement. The documentation gap stood out, especially as other states rolled out targeted relief or expanded housing assistance during the same period. To fill in the blanks, a formal request under the Freedom of Information Act was prepared, targeting the Alabama Department of Finance, the Department of Human Resources, and the governor's own records office. The request asked for any internal memos, meeting notes, or budget reallocations that might show behind-the-scenes discussions or emergency planning related to housing. The outcome of that search would either confirm a silent scramble to address the problem or reveal that the state's leaders had left the problem largely unaddressed. For now, the numbers spoke for themselves: a persistent, measurable shortage and a public record with more questions than answers. Week 1 on the mission calendar opened with a tightly scripted sequence. On May 24, 2025, a full-duration RS-25 hot fire test was scheduled at NASA's Stennis Space Center, part of the Artemis program's ongoing preparations. The technical staff, scattered across supplier plants and control rooms, tracked every milestone with precision. Each line item on the test schedule memo carried a contract reference and a timestamp, linking hundreds of downstream tasks across the supply chain. For suppliers, the schedule was not just a guideline. It dictated shift patterns, payroll cycles, and raw material orders, all tied back to a single mission designation and contract ID. 2 days after the scheduled hot fire, on May 26, 2025, internal communications flagged an anomaly in the telemetry stream. The alert, cataloged in a supplier bulletin, triggered an immediate pause in downstream activities. No public statement followed, but the effect was felt instantly. Purchase orders were frozen, and teams began a methodical review of data logs. The mission classification tag shifted from routine to under scrutiny, a subtle change that rippled outward through the supplier network. By May 28, 2025, the investigation was officially underway, as documented in the internal bulletin MSFC_BUL_20250528.pdf. The gap between the first flagged anomaly and the formal start of the audit was measured in hours, not days, a testament to the system's sensitivity. For the technical staff, most of whom would never appear in a press release, the week's events played out as a series of coded updates and after-hours calls. Every step was logged, every deviation noted. The timeline card for this week, stamped with mission numbers, contract placeholders, and classification codes, captured a moment when routine operations gave way to uncertainty, setting the stage for consequences that would soon move beyond the test stand. On September 2, 2025, the Alabama Department of Labor posted a WARN notice for a mid-sized aerospace supplier in Madison County. 60 workers received formal layoff notifications, their names listed in a document required by federal law. For many, the news arrived by email and was confirmed in a brief, tense meeting. Within days, Human Resources handed out packets outlining unemployment insurance, COBRA options, and the expiration date for their last paycheck. The layoffs rippled outward. Mortgage payments were missed, household budgets were slashed, and a new round of calls went to local housing counselors. In Jefferson County, court records logged 187 foreclosure filings between September and October. Each entry in the county CSV ledger represented a family forced into a legal process that often ends with the loss of a home. The filings clustered in neighborhoods already on edge, where property values had flattened and rental demand outpaced supply. Local legal aid clinics reported a surge in requests for help, their caseworkers stretched thin by the volume. The foreclosures exposed growing strain on community services. At the state level, the Government Accountability Office, GAO, released a report on September 13, 2025, flagging $22 million in cost overruns in a procurement contract tied to the Marshall Space Flight Center. The audit, stamped with the designation GAO25XX, detailed how a series of technical delays and unplanned expenses had pushed the project far beyond its original budget. The Department of Finance projected an $18 million shortfall for the fourth quarter, a gap that would have to be closed by cuts, borrowing, or emergency appropriations. The cost pressures were now visible at the center of state planning. The legislature responded with House Bill 393, debated in heated committee sessions through October. The final version, signed into law on November 2, 2025, allocated $14 million for emergency rental assistance and $3 million for workforce retraining. The relief was targeted, temporary, and by most estimates insufficient to meet the scale of the crisis. For families facing foreclosure, and for workers still waiting for the next contract to materialize, the numbers on the page offered little comfort. The scramble for solutions continued, even as the documentation left the true causes unresolved. Today, Alabama's economic lifelines and housing stability are intertwined more tightly than ever. As the aerospace sector faces new uncertainties, policy choices made now will echo for a generation. The question remains, who gets to call Alabama home when the ground beneath keeps shifting?